Thank you, Karen. So this is Jill, and Karen and I are both here with you live now. We even wore the same shirts that we had on the other day, so yeah. So we are here to answer any questions. I know there were some comments that came in as we were talking. I think Beth took note of those. I just wanted to, a couple of things that kind of stuck out to me as Karen was talking. And one, Joni talks about us being naive and having the courage to be naive, and humility kind of word came to me too, as Karen was talking about. We need to be humble in terms of what we know and we don't know, right? And that is, we have to make those assumptions that people do have trauma in their life, even if they haven't told us the specific story they're telling us now. And the other thing, Karen, I really liked was you had a triangle on there that had behavior and emotion on it. And I think we all hear that phrase and we use that phrase of behavior is communication. But I also like to remind people that sometimes behavior is an emotion, right? It may not be words somebody's trying to tell you, but we all have different ways of expressing our emotion. And that's what sometimes is being shared through that behavior.
So true. It's
yeah,
inadvertent communication.
Right. Exactly.
Not always the purpose.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah. The other thing that I had time just to reflect as you were talking, Karen, but the other things I think that kind of stuck out to me in terms of how we, again, don't always know the story, and that there are many times when we've inadvertently re-traumatized people. And a couple of things you mentioned, the trauma of betrayal and the trauma of neglect. And then I think about how many times people have had programs where there was planned ignoring, and how those kind of things just are direct re-traumatization of that betrayal, neglect that people have felt.
That's so true. And I really appreciated that very profound connection you made between that freeze response and the system shutting down and non-compliance, and how many times have people had non-compliance targeted in their plan when they're just shut down totally because it's a fear response.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
The other connection I made was that the trauma of exclusion, being excluded, not belonging. And again, we have programs and many times when we've had somebody be isolated because of something they've done, or not be able to participate, not be able to go somewhere because of some behavioral presentation that had happened earlier in the day. And again, we're just triggering re-traumatizing when we know that people with IDD are such at risk existence many times without a lot of people around them.
So true.
So Beth, were there other questions that had come in?
So there were a preponderance of comments about how helpful and useful this presentation was, how people want to share it with their community partners. And I just want to take this opportunity to remind people that if you're here, it's because you're connected to a START program. So please get in touch with your START program. They will have access to the link to this training. And it's certainly something that we want you to share and discuss amongst your own communities. With that being said, Dr. Hinton, we did have a question from Shannon C., who said, you talked about trauma causing memory problems. Can you elaborate? Do you mean blocking memories or pervasive memories?
I would say both. I think when people have experienced trauma, there are a lot of times people who experience trauma are not able to retell what happened to them. So they may not, so it's different things, I think, affecting memory. They may not have a distinct memory of that happening in terms of being able to cognitively share something, but their body remembers it. So that real distinct memory is not there. But I also think, just like we talked about, depending on when trauma happens, and we're talking about the development of the brain, that then trauma also takes so much energy that it keeps people from using their cognitive brain, their learning brain, to learn, to develop memory. So those are two different ways I think about it. Karen, you might have other ideas about that.
No, I think you said it really well. I mean, this is the reality. Like in your presentation, Jill, I thought you laid it out so beautifully where that, frontal lobe, it's shutting down. It's not online, and it's very hard to access it when you have that constant fear response,
Yeah.
just like language.
We have another question from Christy, who said, in working with someone with trauma, in cases where a conservator is involved, how can we provide the support needed without conservator interference? Which has some interesting connotations.
Well,
Well,
I'll jump
Karen, you
in.
want to go? Okay.
Yeah. Well, my experience has been that you have to it's so much easier to really work directly to try to get conservator buy-in. And that's tough. But sometimes, like, I had one person who I had coffee with maybe 5 times trying to convince her that her son could get therapy and it would be a really good thing, and that maybe he could also date and the world wouldn't fall apart. But, building that relationship with her and kind of getting her to trust me helped a lot in my experience.
Well, and I also think, I don't know if this was the case in relation to the question, but one thing we're learning, CSS has been involved with a couple of teams in New York and doing a study of people referred to starting doing PTSD screenings when people came in, and the positive screenings are in the 90%. I mean, yeah, people have trauma. We know that. We talked about that. But the other interesting thing that they've learned along the way is that many of the caregivers who were answering some of these questions reported things that they didn't recognize as trauma for the person. So they would report something like that there was a house fire when the person was 5 years old, and they maybe lost all their belongings, and it was a scary situation, or they had moved 4 times, or so they would report things that they didn't see as traumatic. And I think trying to help people understand that for folks with IDD, there's so many things that they experience, and as Karen pointed out, bullying in school, betrayal, those things are traumatic events for folks. So sometimes trying to, when we say somebody needs treatment for trauma, somebody will think, well, they hadn't been physically assaulted, or they hadn't, but there's so many things that could affect somebody. And maybe part of that education is helping people see the things that can be scary and traumatic for folks with IDD.
Wonderful responses. Thank you. S. Bryant has a question for Dr. Harvey. As a parent of a young adult with IDD and always trying to foster as much independence as possible, sometimes I struggle with pulling back and allowing natural consequences to occur, but wondering if sometimes my son might feel as though he has been betrayed because I'm no longer there at the same level. Betrayal trauma resonated with me, and I'm wondering how to make sure betrayal isn't confused with independence.
That is a fantastic question. That is so really at the heart of parenting, right? So you want these kids to take off, but then you're worried, and then you think, oh, they think I've turned on them. So I think communication is so important. So my experience is even the youth that I've worked with, the kiddos that don't use words are still understanding you. And to constantly explain and say, I want to be there for you, but right now I'm going to let you do this because I really know that you can become a great adult, and I'm stepping back so you can see the way it is. And, I'm here for you when you want to talk about it, or you need somebody, but I'm not going to go out there and do it for you. I need you to do this because you've got it in you, whatever. But really talking and communicating that's why you're not there, because you believe in them and you believe in their ability to be independent. Getting that, in their head, I think is very helpful. And during the calm times, because like Dr. Jill showed us, not when people are triggered, because they're not going to understand a darn thing you're saying, but to be constantly explaining why you're doing what you're doing and building them up with that and building that sense of confidence that they can have that independence, I think will help a lot. You probably already do it.
Well, and I just add to that, I think the other part of that, certainly, and this is not what you're saying at all, I don't think, as a parent, but you're not, allowing somebody to be in an intentionally harmful situation, right? But having them to have experiences that help them grow. And I think the other important thing is that, emphasizing the fact that it's okay if things don't go well, right? So we're going to try this, but if it doesn't, that's great. We've learned something. You've learned something. I think so celebrating things that don't go well is also important for us as we help people to grow. It's important for all of us, I think, to recognize that mistakes or things, failures are learning experiences for us.
That's great. I love the concept of celebrating.
Wonderful.
Yay, we made a mistake.
Yeah, exactly.
This isn't a question, but it's a salient comment that I wanted to share for your response. This is from Jenny Matai. Just saw program staff not take a person to his therapy session due to an incident that occurred a prior day. And with any incident, the program has said that he can't go out, and staff's reasoning was for safety.
So you see Karen and I both shaking our heads, right? So I think that that's if you think about what we talked about in terms of how the brain's working, certainly the day before, whatever happened, the person wasn't thinking, if I do this, then I might not get to go to therapy, right? There was no plan in that, or I don't want to go to therapy, so I'm going to do this. There's probably absolutely no plan as part of that. And the fact that, especially things that are a day apart, people that have executive functioning difficulties and trauma are really not making really good connection between those two things anyway. So to me, that's going to feel like an additional trigger for that person, is to then deny them access to something that actually could be helpful for them.
Exactly. It's like saying to somebody who's sick, if you get sick, you're not going to get to go see the doctor.
Right. Right. And that's a good point, which is probably the upset the day before is exactly why they need to go to the therapy appointment. Right. But I think that's I remember working with one of our START programs. We have a crisis resource center, crisis house that we work with, and having an individual there who did become upset one morning, dysregulated, something hadn't gone right. And then that afternoon there was an outing. They're getting ready to go and invited her to come. And she's like, I can still go. And they're like, yes, you can go. And she said, even though I did that this morning, I can still go. And the director there said, well, how are you feeling right now? And she said, I'm feeling pretty good. And he said, well, then we're going to go. Like, it's not based on something before. You're feeling good. You're feeling safe. We're going to go. But I think we drilled that into people so much. And then, like you said, Karen, then often, again, that backfires on us, right? Because it makes the person so anxious about how this one thing, when I got upset, now what's going to happen? What's going to happen next? What am I going to lose? And it just kind of makes everything worse when we approach it from that perspective.
So true.
Wonderful responses. Thank you both. We have about 5 minutes left, and we have another question from Lisa here. Staff turnover is something that most agencies have to work through, but do you have any suggestions on how we can prepare the people that we support for this potential reoccurring trauma? Also, possible techniques to support them after a staff has left.
That is trauma. That is, and thank you for recognizing that. That's such a beautiful question, because, we don't always hear that. We hear, we have a problem with turnover, and then here's folks and they're having problems with their behaviors, when it's very connected. Mm-hmm. Right. And I've worked with people who thought it was personal and they were rejected personally, where they blamed each other in the group home. That was your fault she left. It's tough. I think, for me, I have to confess, I always go to counseling and therapy. And I do grief therapy with people quite a lot. And sometimes we have to do a little bit of grief counseling around the loss of staff. I have a little book on my website, KarenHarvey.org, called The Goodbye Book, where you can just fill it out with someone about who they lost. And it can even be a loss of someone who's still alive but left them. Mm-hmm. I think that grief work is important.
I think that's something we don't pay enough attention to, is grief and loss, and then that can turn into traumatic grief. I would say the other thing in that situation to consider is that, to me, the reason so many people with IDD get so attached to some of their paid caregivers is that they don't have other people in their life. So, I think it's, that's one of the goals I think of START is to kind of we do that eco map at the beginning, right? And often see that the only people in that person's life are paid to be there. So how do we extend that circle and create more opportunities for relationships that are not paid, so that some of those coming and going are not as significant. So if the only people you have in your life are those people that are paid to be there and they come and go, then that is hard. And you have people constantly coming and going. But if you have 2 or 3 other people in your life that are not paid to be there, that are more constant, they're your real friends, then that creates a continuity. And I think it can soften the comings and goings that happen in other parts of a person's lives.
That's the core issue. That's really it.
Right.
That's fantastic. You're so right.
Well, thank you both. We have 2 minutes left before we go on to a half-an-hour break. I just want to thank you both for sharing your wisdom and expertise with us today, and just let you know that there were some comments that stemmed from that previous question about the importance of supporting staff as well, and an acknowledgement and gratitude for you, Dr. Harvey, for bringing that up in your presentation around the trauma that staff can experience and how important it is to support staff so that they can provide positive support to the people that they're supporting.
It's tough. It's tough right now too. This COVID is really tough on everybody.
Creating more difficulties.
And Ebony just brought that up too, especially with COVID and individuals staying at home, that they, that's a change and they don't understand why family can't visit or they can't do the things that they might be used to be doing. And she ended with a question: are we creating new traumas? So something to think about. Okay.
And luckily, you'll have Dr. Jill tomorrow who will tell you all about how people are going to heal.
That's
So
right.
that'll be great.
That's right. Well, thank you both very much for being here for this wonderful question and answer session. I think we're going to move toward our break now. Okay, and we will return back in a half an hour. That'll be 3:30 Eastern and 12:30 Pacific.
Keep these good questions in your head, and when we come back, we'll ask you to apply some of what we've talked about today with some vignettes. So excited to have that conversation with you all too.
Everybody can stay online. You can just remain muted with your cameras off. We'll come back in a half an hour. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We're going to get started in just a minute. Okay. Welcome back, Dr. Hinton and Dr. Harvey. Welcome back, everybody, to the second part of today's December virtual orientation series, and I'm going to hand it over to you both.
All right, thank you, Beth. Yeah, so welcome back. We're excited to be able to spend a little more time talking about trauma and how we can improve how we understand it and influence how we then respond in terms of how we work with the folks we support. So what we're going to do this afternoon is I'm going to hand it over to Karen in just a minute for her to present two different individuals to you. So provide some case vignettes. I think you all have summaries of those case vignettes that were sent to you in the program guide. So Karen's going to run through both of those. And then I'll talk through, you also have a list of questions. I'll talk through a little bit of the questions, give you a couple more things to think about before we break into groups. And then we will break you all into smaller groups. And the vignettes, we'll say this again in a few minutes, but the vignettes, we have number 1 and number 2. And when we break into groups, we'll have the odd number groups focus on vignette 1 and the even number groups focus on number 2. So you won't have to do both of them, but we thought we'd use 2 different ones just to have a little more variety in terms of what we were looking at. So Karen, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk a little bit about the 2 folks that we want to think about today. You need to unmute, Karen.
Of course I need to unmute. How many times do I do that in a week? Probably about 20.
Become a common occurrence for all of us, I think.
I'm so sorry about that. So, you know, we worked together and looked at just a lot of folks that we deal with. And again, I want to say thank you so much to those of you here today. The work that you do is so important and it's really tough. So we looked at a lot of the different types of challenges and we've talked today about trauma. So we kind of have 2 scenarios that are conglomerates of some of the challenges we might face with different issues to kind of, you know, break apart and look at. And after I read both of them to you, Dr. Jill is going to go over questions to talk about when you discuss the vignettes in your group. So here we go. So Gina is a 21-year-old young woman with a mild intellectual disability. She was removed from her biological mother when she was 4 years old due to neglect. Her mother experienced a substance abuse disorder. Gina was reportedly left at home on multiple occasions before she was moved to foster care. She has a history of multiple placements in the foster care system. Gina was diagnosed with a mild intellectual disability and received special education services through the school system. At age 15, Gina returned to live with her mother, who had received addiction treatment. Her relationship with her mother was tumultuous. Gina had episodes of property destruction in the home, and there were frequent altercations between her and her mother. Gina transitioned at age 21 into Hollow Hills Group Home, and her transition was not smooth. For about the first 6 months, staff called 911 approximately 3 to 4 times a month due to dysregulation and aggression. One incident occurred when Gina wanted something different than what was being served for dinner. She became verbally aggressive, and the staff responded by telling Gina that she was spoiled. An intense verbal altercation followed, including racial slurs, and Gina eventually pulled a staff person's hair. On another occasion, Gina became upset when her mother had promised to visit but had not shown up. Gina engaged in property destruction, and staff responded by restraining her. Gina pushed, shoved the staff, and 911 was called. On a third occasion, Gina's housemate came home from a weekend at her family's home with a cute little stuffed animal and said, "Look what I got." She said that to Gina. Gina grabbed it and would not give it back. A physical altercation followed. So Gina's having a tough time. That's number 1. Next one. I will read the vignette number 2. Okay. John is a young man with autism who lives with his mother and younger brother. His father passed away from cancer when John was 9 years old. John struggles with changes in his schedule. He had a very difficult time when his program shut down due to the COVID pandemic. Finally, after months, he got into a routine where he was doing different activities in the home, playing games, and learning to make different foods. John uses very few words and had difficulties explaining his frustrations. But his mother had realized that a structured day would help. So together they set up a schedule. Then the day program opened back up with a hybrid schedule. John was happy to go back to his program, but confused and upset about not going every day and about a new van driver. His frustrations mounted, and he came home on the days he was supposed to attend the program and began banging things. He broke a lamp and kicked a hole in the wall. On the days he didn't go to the program, he began shouting throughout the day. His brother no longer brought friends home to the house and had begun avoiding John and staying longer and longer at his friends' homes. John was frustrated and overwhelmed. John's mother, was frustrated and overwhelmed, trying to do her job from home and watch over her sons at the same time. Things were worsening each day. So they're both in a tough place. Okay. So for the discussion, I'll turn it back over to Dr. Jill.
Okay. So again, as Karen said, two probably vignettes or situations that may sound a little familiar to some situations you've encountered before. We particularly wanted to talk about one that involved COVID, because we know a lot of you have been working with families who are experiencing extra stress during COVID also, and thinking about how that might interact with trauma experiences from the past, or even how COVID itself presents trauma. So as you're thinking about in your group, potential trauma experiences. So we want you to think about and identify some of the trauma experiences that are part of these scenarios. And I want you to think carefully about some that are very obvious in terms of those descriptions, but also to consider some of Karen's discussion earlier today around traumas that are often missed in people with IDD, but they're very common experiences for many people with IDD in terms of trauma. And then again, we talked about how sometimes signs and symptoms of trauma can be misinterpreted. So thinking about how that might happen with these two scenarios. Knowing that trauma is multi-system, right, affects biopsychosocially. We also need to understand the biopsychosocial vulnerabilities that a person may come to the situation with even before trauma, and how these kind of interact with each other. Or is there more information you'd want to know about the person? What else? With START, we always talk about being curious, right? So is there more information we need to know in order to think about developing strategies for these folks? Based on what we've learned today about the brain and what trauma does to the brain, and about executive functioning, why would just a simple contingency-based intervention maybe not work for this person and be inappropriate? And then from a broader perspective, how important is it to understand trauma and trauma-informed care from the START perspective, and how does that connect to some of our core principles and practices that we talk about frequently in START? So thinking about, we've already mentioned biopsychosocial, we talk about a systemic approach, right, of working within a whole system for folks. We talk about person-centered, and we talk about cultural sensitivities and cultural competency. So thinking about some of the other core principles and how they might interact with a trauma-informed approach. So I know there's a lot of questions, but we've tried to break you down into groups that are small enough that everybody will have a chance to contribute. And you'll have opportunity. And again, if the folks who have, as you get into your groups, so Beth, you could help me with this. So will they know what number group they're in? Is there a way for them to, I'm trying to figure out how. Okay.
Yeah, the breakout number will
Okay.
display. Yeah.
Okay. So again, if you have an odd number group, take vignette 1, which was Gina. And if you have the even number, then take vignette number 2 in terms of your discussion. So we'll give you about 30 minutes to to discuss this within your group. And then we'd like to come back and have as many of you as can. Obviously, we may not get to everybody, but we'll have some of you within the groups to share some of your discussions and ways that you've answered the questions. Anything else, Karen, from you of things to think about?
That sounds good. I love the questions that you came up with. I think, you know, you should have some really interesting discussion there. Should be good.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. So I'm going to hand it back over to whoever's going to do the groups.
We will do the groups, and I'm going to go over just some basic logistics. Thank you, both Jill and Karen. All right, so you are going to be broken up randomly into groups. You will have 30 minutes, so we will return back here at 4:15. You are going to be moved into the group, and you will come out of the group without having to do anything. You will see a prompt on your screen that asks you to click join to go to the breakout room. That's it. When you enter the breakout room, this is a discussion opportunity for discussion and processing. So please turn your cameras on and unmute yourself when you're speaking. You might also want to identify a discussion leader, someone who will read the prompts out loud and keep the discussion going. You might want to identify a note taker and reporter who will come back to the large group and report out on behalf of your group. It may also be helpful to identify a timekeeper so that you can keep track of your half an hour. And you will get a 1-minute warning before your breakout room closes automatically. And when we come back, we'll randomly select groups to report out. And we ask that you just take about 3 minutes or less to report out so we can hear from as many people as possible. While you're in the group, please know that there's an ask for help button. If you need anything, someone from CSS can pop in and help out. All right, best of luck. We are going to send you off into your breakout rooms. Please remember that your resources are on the website. You should see a pop-up that says join.
Which group are you in?
Hi.
I call timekeeper.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
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 Hi,
Hello.
everyone. Hi, everyone. You guys are all still in the main room. Do you know that?
I
No,
didn't call timekeeper.
I don't get out of
So
here.
we have a couple of options.
Okay.
You can look down at the bottom and
Mhm.
where it says breakout rooms, there should be a little thing that says join. See if you could do that.
Yeah, I don't have.
I'm not seeing the breakout room.
That's what I
Okay,
was just
all right.
thinking. We didn't get one.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
I'm
actually
gonna-
my link broke,
There's
so
no
I had to
breakout.
rejoin.
There's no break.
I'm going to try and reassign you, okay?
Yeah, I didn't
not-
receive.
If not, we'll do a breakout right here, but I'm going to do the best I can to put you
There
in.
it is.
So be patient with me because now I have to do it manually. Hopefully some of you are being moved.
The participant numbers are going down by 1, so hopefully that's working.
I think it is. We're getting there. Okay, are there people still here that are unassigned?
Anne Marie, are you going to have a group in this room? Because
I
there's
tried
someone,
to.
there's
I
someone
tried
who needs captioning. Can they do captioning in the breakouts?
No, the captioning remains here. So if we have, they
So,
come back here.
all right, so I will tell Beth that they need to find out who they are. Anne Marie, how many people are in this breakout right now? Oh, I guess I could look in the breakout
It
thing.
ranges from like 10 to 15.
I'm looking at breakout 1.
Yep.
It's you have 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to send that person to breakout 1.
Okay, so the captioning is following us, Marianne, in the main room.
All right, and that's breakout 1, or is that?
Does not have a breakout number. It's just the main room.
So what should they do?
They should leave their breakout room.
Okay.
However, it doesn't seem like there's any active participants in this group.
Yeah, because we're in the main room. Like I'm only seeing one person in the main room.
Okay.
Okay, so I need to move to Shisa. Beth just asked me to move, let's see, to Sheena to 15, which I just did. But I don't know if that's going to help.
Okay, so it's Lisa Gonzalez needs to come. We're gonna have to try to do a breakout in this room, in this main room, so.
Okay, so who do I need to move out of the main room, into the main room?
Lisa Gonzalez.
Do you know which room
And-
she's in?
I can ask Beth. And we're gonna have to create a
Okay,
here. So who do we have here?
okay, I see Lisa. She is not, and she's in the main room.
Hi, Lisa, are you, hi, Lisa. I see Lisa up there. So how's our chat working? Let me just see if I can.
Mary Ann, did you reach out to Lisa?
I'm chatting to her right now and I'm not getting a return message from her.
Okay.
She's
All
on,
right.
I can see her picture up there. She's muted.
Yeah.
And I guess I felt that the captions would be available to her in each of the breakouts. And so since they're not, she had requested an ASL interpreter and I asked if captioning would be okay. And she said yes, but if there's no captioning in the breakout rooms, I didn't.
Okay.
So I just jumped in and chatted with Beth and Karen and Jill. And I explained to Beth that if we don't assign people to stay within the main room, then we can't have an active group. Therefore, we don't have, live captioning for.
Right. I
So-
didn't, my mistake for moving everybody out. I did not realize that there was a request. So,
It's my fault for not understanding that the breakout sessions didn't all have captions.
okay. So we will work for tomorrow's breakout. We'll make sure that we leave people in the main room with the captioning.
And I will check with her.
Hi.
Hi, Melissa.
I lost connection on my internet and
Okay.
I got
Okay.
kicked out of my room, and so I logged back in.
Okay, that's fine. Melinda, do you remember what room you were in?
I don't remember. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. So I will just assign you to a room and you can just let them know what happened.
Okay, thank you. I apologize.
Oh, no problem. It happened. All right,
Do you
let me
remember
move-
what case you were talking about? So you can at
I
least.
wasn't able to connect, and then it just threw me off in the beginning, and so I went
Okay.
back to the link and I actually logged on.
Okay, that's
Again.
fine. I am going to put you, let's say, in room 3.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem.
I need to be put into a room also. I came in late because I was at another
Oh,
meeting.
hi, Beth. Okay.
Hi.
I will assign you. I'm going
Thanks.
to put you into room 4.
All right, thanks.
Here you go.
stuff that we said, but what was the social? Was that the loss of the Friends from Day program?
Oh, I have detailed notes, so I can take over for sharing. But brother's abandonment, triggering abandonment of dead father, communication issues, if ABA therapy has traumatized him and if he's reacting to that, what kind of support the mom is getting, and does he have assistive technology support where that would help him communicate? So
Was that for 4? I had that stuff down for 4. Some of that
that's
that you were
the
saying.
bio.
Anyone
Okay.
else have any problem with their video?
I think I'm good at this point.
Okay, thanks, Ebony. You're all set now.
Thank you. Okay,
I don't know why it does that sometime, but thanks for calling me. All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.
Can you see me now?
Welcome back to the main room. We're just going to give people a few more minutes to make their way back. I hope you all had a good discussion. We'll get started in just a minute. As you return back to the main room, we do ask that you turn your cameras off and mute yourselves. This will help us preserve bandwidth and allow us to engage with one another more effectively. Thank you.
All right, I think everybody's out of their breakout rooms.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Well, we hope you all had some good discussion within your breakout rooms. What we do, we have 45 minutes, so we're going to try to get to as many groups as we possibly can. And we're thinking that instead of going through the questions, we may just call on your rooms and have you kind of share a little bit about your discussion and what were some of the most salient or thought-provoking things that you discussed that you want to share with the group. So you don't feel like you have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 through the questions, but just kind of share what were some of the important points that you think came out of your discussion. So, and then Karen and I will, comment or follow up with some of them, but we'll try to go through as many groups as possible. So, for lack of any creative, imaginative way to do this, I'm just going to start with group 1. So if whoever's the spokesman could just unmute and show us is it Lisa?
It's Lisa, yes.
Oh,
Hi,
good.
how are you? So yeah, we had actually a pretty productive discussion with our group. We really spent some time talking about the different types of trauma or different traumatic experiences that we felt she probably had throughout her life. One person shared, and I quoted it because I just felt like that really resonated, was at the end of it all, she really just struggles at this point with a basic lack of feelings of safety within her system. So that's, in regards to her specific traumas. And then we spent a lot of time kind of talking about the system and how we can help the system engage her a little bit better. So maybe giving some support to the staff and the mom as well to try to figure out how to make the visits a little bit more successful. Let's see. Oh, and then one person said that I thought was really great was trying to increase empathy within the system. So having the staff and the family understand what she's experiencing, and when some of the things that she says or does to the staff, it's not really to the staff. So it's not a personal thing that she's doing. And some of the things that we wanted to know was, is she in fact diagnosed with fetal alcohol? And because that would really help us understanding with executive functioning and understanding that really is why she couldn't have those contingency-based plans. And then we talked about why was she moving from different foster placements, because that's again some additional trauma that she could be experiencing.
Thank you. I think that the question about, when you heard that the mother has some substance use issues, I mean, that's a good question. Did she have exposure in utero? Because that would point to a difference in the way her brain developed from the very beginning.
Yeah.
As Karen said earlier, that people with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder certainly don't, the part of their brain that connects cause and effect doesn't work very well. So that would have a lot to do with some of her presentation. And I really like the way you talked about the system, because when we think about the trauma-informed approach in general, it's more than just that person, it's the system. And certainly those staff have been traumatized by some of what's happened.
Yeah.
Mother probably has experienced her own trauma throughout her life with substance use issues. So paying attention to that, I think, is really key.
Thank you.
Anything from you, Karen?
Yeah, that was wonderful. Yeah, and empathy of the system, right?
Mhm.
And the reality is, we don't know what we don't know. So we often don't know. Mom doesn't say, yeah, I was hitting the pipe, or, you know, it just isn't coming out.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I really had an alcohol problem, and we're not going to know. We don't know. Even I used to think that, okay, 90% of the people are going to have some kind of facial feature of fetal alcohol syndrome, like the pulled up nose or pressed in, and the, you know, sleepy eyes and lowered ears. Now, the latest statistic I read, 10%.
Yeah.
10% will show it. So we don't know what we don't know. And that's you know, great questions. And sometimes we won't have those answers, but we can, with those theories and with the knowledge base, go, oh, okay, we've got some impulse control issues that might be actually organic.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, that was great. I think you hit a lot of good points.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. All right, we'll move to group 2, which should have focused on the other vignette of the young boy. Was it John?
Yeah.
Yes, it was John. We and you didn't want us to go through the whole list of questions, but you know, we, of course, his traumas were fairly evident. Father dying when he was 9, autism. So, you know, dealing with any kind of change is going to be extremely difficult. We counted the program shut down for COVID, and everything surrounding COVID as a trauma for him. His isolation from school, group, any social contacts that he had, scheduling changes, the new van driver, variations in the programs from being at home to being at school, and that's not normal. Some of the ways that he showed his response to those traumas: the property destruction, aggression, verbal aggression, betrayal. And one of the things that we talked about also was, and this is not really, I wrote it here and I put an arrow and I forgot to say it, but the betrayal by the brother who no longer was bringing his friends home. We came up with so many, a whole bunch. I had to write in for all kinds of questions that what we didn't know that we wanted to know. Probably a couple, I'm just going to hit on some of the high ones. Was Mom able to discuss this new schedule? Was she able to do it in a way that was visual, so that you know, what was his level of understanding? Yes, he was nonverbal, but does he understand more than he can verbalize? What did as it got worse and worse and Mom was less able to cope and struggling with work and taking care of him, what did that look like for them? Was she raging? Was she melting down? Where are we actually at with COVID? Is this March or September? I mean, what was his degree? Like I've already said, what was his degree of mental functioning? He's not verbal, very verbal, but you know, does he understand a lot? What was his meal schedule? Did he eat differently at home than he did at school? Is he missing those school meals? Is there something about his days at school, his friendships there, his relationships with his teachers? So what was that like? And then, sorry, I didn't write the questions down. Understanding trauma, it would have helped to focus on the positives and his strengths more than using some kind of
I've lost a word because I'm on stage here.
Listen.
Redirecting would have been far more better than giving him consequences.
Yeah.
So we discussed that, and then I think that was it.
Or maybe even reassuring him, because it sounds like he was confused, scared. All of a sudden his world had changed, right? Yeah. Thank you. Lots of good questions. And I think that's an important part of what the work we do is START, and the work we do in terms of trauma. We may not always get all the answers, but being curious about other things that have happened is really important for us. Karen, were you going to share something else?
Oh, it's so true. And great points, and great points on things we could have included that we should have included, that I should have included. But, you know, what comes to mind is William Stillman is a man who speaks a lot about autism and has autism. And he always says, assume intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's just kind of my go-to, like, okay, assume intelligence. People do get it, might not have the words, might not use the words, might not use the words verbally. Maybe we can find other ways that they can use words, but they know. And we don't know what mom was going through and how she was coping.
Yeah.
Right? We don't know. And a lot of times when we go into homes, we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
What goes on behind closed doors, and what kind of trauma state that mother's in, that she lost her husband.
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of trauma has there been to the family system?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shannon, in group 2. All right, group 3, we'll go back to Gina.
Hi. So we hit on a lot of the same things that group 1 did. Just a lot of neglect and loneliness, a lot of betrayal in her life, just constant motion and moving to where she never was able to create a regulation stage. She just kind of stayed in that movement. We did notice that her most common behavior that was presented in the vignette was she acts out, she breaks things, she throws things, she tantrums, for lack of a better word. We had so many questions. We were wanting to know, did mom use while she was pregnant? Because that could be a huge deciding factor on what's really going on. Was she predispositioned this way, or was this due to solely the outside traumas that she endured? We wanted to know what was in her IEP. Like, what services was she receiving? Because there's this huge gap from the age of 4 to the age of 15. And then again, from 15 to the time she gets to the board and care, we don't know what's going on. So like, was the school heavily involved, and was it positive or negative? We wanted to know what she looks like when she's well. When she's doing well, what does that look like? So that we can kind of start to identify she's not well right now, something's wrong, and kind of pick up on the body language of it before anything else happens. We also wanted to know, what did mom's drug abuse look like? Was it solely mom was leaving her home alone and just general neglecting her? Or was it like a party house where there were people constantly in and out, which could also add to her unstable feelings of, stability and everything? We wanted to know if she had mental health services or diagnoses. Was she on any type of medication? We all generally felt that there needed to be a lot more history needed to be filled in before we could really say a whole lot. We wanted to know predictable triggers. Like, is there a certain thing that we know sets her off? A certain word, a certain tone of voice, a certain, you rolled your eyes at her and now it's Fight Club. Just wondering what that was like. Was it the same house? Did she go back? Did mom still have the same home that she had when she was 4? And if so, what would that have felt like or been like for her? And like, are there any positive relationships in her life? Like, it's just a whole vignette of negative neglect, betrayal, trauma, and no, there's no lifeline for her that we could see. And we definitely want to identify a lifeline that she could kind of grab onto while she tries to heal. We kind of all laughed at the question about, about START, because it kind of answers itself. We were like, well, the START program is, yeah, this is all about positive psychology, empowerment, patience, medical versus mental health, and finding a balance in between. And it's very person-centered. So that's what we found. I'm gonna turn my camera off.
So I like that you, again, came up with things we didn't know, and that I like the word lifeline or connection, because and other groups may mention this, but thinking about that 0 to 4 age and kind of that attachment connection was not really healthy at that point. And so trying to find that connection, I think, would be really important for her. All right, good work. You guys are amazing. We're up to group 4. Back to John.
Hello. So I felt group 2 did a wonderful job of explaining most of the things that we were talking about when we also discussed John. So I would like to say that I felt our group did an amazing job of really humanizing John from just a vignette. A lot of the time was spent talking about their concerns for him, where we could provide more support, looking into things like, has he had enough things like grief therapy from his father's passing? Has the family done some sort of counseling as a family overall? We also did a lot of talking about kind of the deficits that may be occurring in executive functioning, whether that might have some hindrance in his ability to understand the shifts going on due to COVID, or understanding the shifts in family dynamics, especially with something like autism. There's, of course, all those concerns about communication skills and understanding relationships. I will say that throughout it all, I think we did a very, very, very good job. Sorry, I'm reading the text chat box as I'm going, so I've gotten myself mixed up there. A very good job of kind of talking about why contingency-based interventions were inappropriate, kind of discussing, not solving the underlying problems, and kind of having this shifting goal line of, well, we solved this behavior, now we're seeing this behavior, so all of this behavior, we're going to go to this, instead of actually solving anything for the family and for John. In another way, we also did a very, very good job of discussing things we would like to know. I'm sure there were lots of questions that everyone came up with, and a lot of the ones that we talked about, we actually ended up kind of referring to as the RSQ questions, because they reminded us of the RSQ, going into things like changes in sleep schedule, changes in eating behaviors, bowel movements, changes in relationships. Yeah, I guess the only other thing I would like to say outside of just applaud my group is just how well they also kind of took every question was asked and related them to one another. Really bringing in anytime a question was brought up in terms of the trauma experience, we would almost immediately come up with other questions to ask about that, and then how that was impacting things like the biopsychosocial vulnerabilities. So, taking something like the loss of his friends that his brother would bring, and how that was a social vulnerability, and, how often we would like to know kind of more what those relationships look like for the brother's friends, like were they good relationships or not? And then kind of moving on to how we could assist in a trauma approach. trauma-informed approach.
Thank you.
Wow, so comprehensive.
Yes, very, very nice. And I also wanted to ask Andrew to compliment the pictures that I saw behind you on your wall.
Oh, that's actually my wife made those. Mine has a Death Star and a unicorn in it, so I'm glad you guys couldn't see that.
Thank you, Andrew.
Beautiful.
Good work, Group 4. Lots of questions, and I really liked how you talked about autism, and Karen had mentioned that autism itself then can create traumas because of this need for things to stay the same and need for predictability, and when that falls apart, or the sensory issues that some people experience. So I'm glad you all approached the autism as part of the picture too. Very nice. Group 5.
Okay, this is Dina. I agreed to speak as long as I didn't have to be on camera.
Okay, we respect that. Go ahead.
We actually had a lot of the, our discussion was good. We covered a lot of things that Group 1 and Group 3 already covered. And one of the things Group 3 touched on that we felt was really important is that she really had no positive person in her life, no one that she had good rapport with, and that it would be important for her to establish rapport with someone she could trust, because there are just no trust issues in her life. She's had the abandonment issue, she's had staff who call her names, she's had exposure to the police continuously, so she really needed someone to have a positive relationship with. One of the other things we touched on was, although she was diagnosed as mildly ID, the question comes to, did they really take into her history? Could this really be a manifestation of her environment and not truly mild intellectual disability, which would then have put her in this special ed program where we don't know what occurred, but could have also had a traumatic effect on her. One of the other things we touched on was that just all the abandonment issues, we don't know what occurred in her history, which I think both groups touched on, is we have no history. We don't know, has she had any type of counseling? Has she had psychiatric care? Does she have any psychiatric diagnoses? One of the things we did touch on was, did mom use during pregnancy? You know, could she have fetal alcohol syndrome? We did touch on those like some of the other groups did. We also noted that just as she has moved through all these systems, she seems to be, although it's not blatantly put out there, labeled as a behavior problem, which again, as you move into different systems, as soon as you're labeled a behavior problem, it's all negative from that point on. So she didn't have the opportunity to have these positive relationships. And in the one instance where she didn't like the food being served, we talked about being in a home with a substance abuser and then being in foster care. There could be the food instability issues that, again, we don't know if the staff know any of her background, and maybe if they did, they would have responded differently to her. So what we focused more on was, we really need to know background, you know, what do the staff know, and how do we get them? How do we set up a system where two of us at least are from Tennessee, so we know that here we get as much background as we can and we share that with staff. So one of the things we thought of is, in this system for this provider, we really need to look at, did you prepare your staff? But again, you also have to look at, did you get all that information? Because we also know it could be a very spotty history based on the multiple placements in foster care and mom maybe not being a good historian.
Exactly.
That's a good point.
And you so often don't get that history. You know, you so often don't get it, and you can't, and then even sometimes when you have a scanty piece of it, a little bit of it, you want to communicate to staff that these are issues, but sometimes staff have their own issues and don't see it don't see the impact. You know, this is it's a very tough thing when people transition to us without the information we need. I know It's happened to me a lot. And you're trying to fill it in, but you don't know what you don't know. And mom isn't always the best informant.
Yeah. And I think that's from a trauma-informed perspective, I think you made some really good points from the group that when we do know some of that history, and somebody I think in the very first group talked about creating empathy, we do try to, we can use some of that history to create empathy. I think from a trauma-informed perspective, we want to get to a point where we don't have to have the story to create empathy, right? So that from a trauma-informed perspective, we want people to, when they see somebody presenting this way, to think, oh, what might have happened in this person's past that they're presenting this way now. So, and then moving on, when we talked about the kind of moving from what happened to somebody, from what's wrong to somebody to what happened to somebody. And then, as you all said, moving forward with how can we create some good relationships for this person who has had very little attachment and had, multiple placements. And the other thing, well, I'll let you all keep going. I'm not going to add anything until somebody else will bring some other good ideas up. So let's move. So where are we now? Up to 6? Is that right?
I didn't keep track. What was the last group? Are we on 7?
I think so.
We were 5, so I think you're on 6.
6. Okay. Thank you, Dina.
Sorry, I'll start writing the numbers down.
Yes.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, Lauren?
Yes, this is Lauren. I'm sorry, there's no camera on my monitor, but I am here and smiling.
Okay.
Group 6, what we did a lot of discussion from dealing with basically how his challenges were affecting him and everyone else. So we also let me make sure I start on the right page.
Lauren, we're having a little bit of difficulty hearing you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
It's a little
Yes,
better.
it sounds like your connection is breaking
Okay.
up a little bit.
Okay, that's probably because it's my old system. I'm sorry. Let me turn it up. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me better? Okay, thank you. We talked about a lot of the mentioned a lot of what the other groups talked about. We talked about how the structure breakdown and lack of communication was heightened due to his vulnerabilities of autism and ID. We also talk about persons with deficits in their verbalization tend to pick up on nonverbal signs from others. So the brother not coming home and the mother's frustration might have caused him to have additional fears and frustration, even though he can't verbalize it himself, but it was attributing to his challenging actions. We also discussed how there were some solutions that we thought about that could help, his providers, such as a calendar with his day schedule on it. So he would become familiar. He was used to routine. He showed that in the past. So if there had been a calendar and someone explained to him, these are the days you stay home and this is what we'll do, and these are the days you'll go to school and this is what you'll do there, it probably would have helped him a lot and gave him a lot more understanding. Also giving him a chance to explain his feelings at the end of the day. His mother could have been suggested to his mother that she allowed him to come in and sit down, and after he's, maybe had a snack and a few minutes, then let him talk about how he was feeling. If his verbalization is not that good, we could use feeling cards. That's the little cards with the little faces. And then this way, he would know he's really letting you know how he feels. And that can make a big difference in a person who is not sure what's going on or even understands if how they're feeling. We also discussed how his actions could be later misdiagnosed by others if providers were not advised of his history or did not understand his diagnosis of autism and ID, and how executive functioning changes when there are big changes in their life. And then also, we also did talk, mention also that coming from the start, principles of how to be informed about trauma, and working with persons, having the empathy others talked about could make a big difference.
Thank you, Lauren. I think you this group did a really nice job of really identifying the additional vulnerabilities that have to be considered in addition to any trauma that happened. What were existing vulnerabilities before any trauma happened, right? With the autism and the communication and the need for predictability and those things. And those always have to be considered along with the trauma. It's never just one thing, right? It's always a combination. Nice, Lauren.
7.
So there was one question that came up in the chat that I wanted to address with you both. This is from Y. Smith, who asked about how much does racism and poverty play a part in trauma?
I think it's giant. I mean, and Jill, you addressed that earlier so beautifully, like just the poverty, and I believe that some of the people that I work with and many of my friends were quite triggered by the murder of George Floyd and the very public murders, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, because we were all sitting home. And, you know, racism itself is quite traumatizing. And there's such complex trauma that we're dealing with, and often we don't even realize it. Like Jill's talking about the vulnerabilities, the many layers. So I think that's such a good point.
Well, and I think with that particular vignette, we can think about, we can maybe make an assumption, maybe it's not accurate, but that with her, when she was young, with her mother having active substance use disorder, and them, it sounds like it was just the two of them, and then her being left at home, that perhaps poverty and not knowing if you were going to be fed and that kind of stuff was existing for Gina. And then I think the scenario also included that she sometimes would use racial slurs. It didn't say specifically if some of the staff were people of color, but I think if that's the case, then you all have done a good job of thinking about trauma from a system perspective, not just for that individual. So I think that brings up another point about trauma within the support system also. So yes, I think both of those things are things we have to take into consideration. Thank you.
Great.
So 7.
Okay. First, I'll start off, Miss Harvey. I loved your comment early in your career that you and just it shows that, and you said that they've gotten better over the years. It shows how honest you are, because coming from a professional, sometimes not all staff think that their plans are perfect and they're the best. So thank you for saying that you grew from that. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. It was hard to miss.
And we apologize. We did a story too, and we apologize. We were supposed to do story 1, but we had a great group from. I'm gonna keep it short and simple and just go to the understanding of trauma and additional information. Our team found some small points that I didn't hear yet. I'm in the home. What services did John have? From OT services to speech therapy, because he had difficulty expressing himself. and you know, and father passed away, but he also saw his father suffer. So that was a big thing that we saw, and pretty much just to be very empathetic at all times of John's life or the individuals that we serve, and for the supervisors that are able to do this training to pass on this information and knowledge to their staff, and to teach to our individuals, you know, every day, and just understand that, you know, we're here for them. It's a person-centered, and just to just be that person that they could you'll help them, and you're a safe person, a person that you could trust, and just you know, do that active listening, you know, be there and you know, repeat back what they say. It's affecting us all. You know, I understand where you're coming from, you know, and just again, pretty much just be there for the person, and to, so.
Thank you, Jose. I heard something that was a little different than what I've heard in other groups, in terms of asking about, was John receiving some specific support that was helping him to communicate better, so that, you know, not just saying he has a vulnerability of communication, but saying right now, has he been traumatized because some type of assistance or that a way he used to communicate is not there anymore? So has he lost some of that? So has he even lost supports that were helping to compensate for some of those vulnerabilities, which is a really, really good question. Thank you. All right, group 8. Do we have anybody from group 8?
Try 9.
We'll go with group 9.
I think I was a 9.
Okay.
Hi. The earlier groups talked a lot about what we also touched on. Let's see. We were definitely wanting more information about her history prior to going into foster care, and then also after she came back home with mom. It was like she was home with mom for 6 years, and then she went back into a group home, and we don't know, you know, what happened. It seemed like there was, to me, like there was not a healing in the relationship. Like there's still this tumultuous relationship going on. So we wondered what type of services they had, whether wraparound services. We were, of course, struck by the lack of understanding from the staff for her predicament. Let's see. And we wanted to know more about if she was on any medication, mental health services, resources, other resources. That wasn't in there. Friendships, other social supports. And then, okay, I'll go to number 5. I don't think anybody talked about that. Why would contingency-based interventions be inappropriate? It doesn't address the underlying trauma, only looks at her behavior, and the behaviors have a function, and that's important to understand.
Right.
That's about it.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody's, well, some people have mentioned it, but not really addressed that. And I think you're right. It's related to trauma, and then thinking about how well, first of all, if there was alcohol exposure, a lot of people have asked about that, then her brain developed differently. So that cause and effect connection is not there. And then if, with the added trauma, if she's responding from that trauma brain, then she's not considering contingencies at that point, just like none of us would be if we were panicked. So yeah, you make a good point about that. We can't, those simple things would not work. And that's probably why the staff were really frustrated too, because they felt like she wasn't learning from experience or able to generalize anything. And so that was probably really frustrating for staff. Very good, thank you. So let's do one more group. Number 10, are we up to 10?
Yes, 10.
Erica.
Hello. So like all the other groups, we kind of had similar conversations. We just kind of identified kind of like the big traumas that have happened, and then you've coupled them with these little traumas with the loss of the van driver. Maybe he really enjoyed the other van driver. And then all the changes that are happening at home. His mother's working from home. His brother is not spending as much time at home. And you may not be understanding why his brother's not spending time at home anymore, which can cause some increase in frustration, feeling isolated, maybe some shame associated with that. Mm-hmm. And then we also talked about, wanting more information. So what is his baseline typically, and how far off of his baseline is he? How is he presenting a day program? Is he holding it together at day program and then coming home where he feels maybe safe and secure and kind of not able to hold it together anymore? Was there therapy for his father passing? We also discussed with the pandemic, is he associating, maybe is there like a fear or connection with his father passing and then possibly losing other loved ones due to the pandemic?
That's the thing I was listening for. You got it. I was going to mention that, but that's perfect. Yeah. How much does he understand about the pandemic, and are people talking about people being sick and dying?
Right.
Yeah.
And then we just talked about really, when you're looking at it through a trauma-informed lens, it really shifts how others view John. And then just, are there natural supports? Does he have other family members that he's able to connect with? Does his mother have any natural supports to kind of help her through this? Also being mindful of how you're interacting with John. There's a lot of changes. His mother's overwhelmed. She may be frustrated when he's coming home and breaking things. Is she reacting in a way that may trigger a more heightened response? What else? And then we wondered about his medications. Have any medications changed? What were his historical diagnoses? What type of coping skills typically work for him? Mm-hmm. And that's about it.
That's a lot.
Thank you, Erica. That's a lot. So we've just got a few minutes left. I was just going to, and somebody actually put something else in the chat. But if we can't get to all the groups, are there any other groups who want to share something that they haven't heard yet? I know a lot of you had some similar assessments of the situations, but are there some things that we haven't covered that anybody wants to comment on?
Looks like there's something from group 8 in the chat.
Yeah, so this is talking about the making sure we're thinking about the whole system, and particularly his mother. We're not, I don't know if it said how old John was, but being a single parent now, it's not clear how long ago her husband died, and what kind of self-care does she have, and what kind of support does she need? Because that, as many people mentioned, John, even if he's not verbal, is picking up on everybody else's uncomfortableness or stress around COVID. So that's really, really important. The other some brought up was the COVID precautions. I was wondering that too, is that You know, maybe, so everybody was probably wearing a mask where he was going, and that might be different. And is that creating fear for him? So a lot of different things that changed.
Yeah. And is there a history of ABA therapy? Somebody put in the chat, great question. And that sometimes that causes its own type of trauma.
Yep. Oh, and somebody, yeah, group 14, that's a great point, that if people have never processed the loss of his father in some way with John, that might always be a trigger. And that's a really good point. During you all working, Karen and I were talking some about trauma treatments and EMDR and dealing with grief and other ways, but has anybody ever kind of tried to process that with John in the way that he could understand? It's a really good point. Any other comments? This has been wonderful.
Oh yeah. Group 11, reaction to food too. Could be that loss of control. That loss of the sense of control is such a giant trigger. And food can be quite the trigger when there's been food deprivation or any kind of issue with that. It's so true. Excellent. Right. It's amazing. So many great points.
And somebody made another point about the staff maybe reminding Gina of someone that may have violated her in some way or been abusive to her. And Karen, you brought that up earlier about realizing that a staff person looked like somebody from somebody's past or somehow reminded them of somebody.
And we never will know what happened, but we can see the trigger, we can see the phenomenon, so we can help that person to feel safe once we put the pieces together from a trauma-informed lens.
Yep. And then Ebony wrote that the lack of power is traumatic. And that is a very powerful statement. A lot of what happens with trauma is you lose control, right? You don't have control over the situation. You can't get yourself out of the situation. So that lack of having power, choices, control of your life is huge in terms of trauma and in terms of healing, as we talked about. Right. Well, I think we're about at our time. This has been wonderful discussion. Thank you all so much it sounds, we weren't in your groups, but it sounds like you all had really active interaction and engagement with each other. So that's how we learn. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely wonderful. And I want to thank you both, Drs. Hinton and Harvey, for facilitating such a thought-provoking session today. And thank you all for participating in today's session. The evaluation link is in the chat and will also be emailed to you for today. Please give us your feedback. It helps us to continuously improve these sessions. Continuing Ed is available and will be posted on the website. And finally, just a reminder, the Zoom link is the same for all 3 days of today's of the series. So we'll see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific to discuss trauma-informed care approaches for people with IDD and MH with Dr. Hinton and Ann LaForce. Thank you very much for coming. Take care.
Thank you all.
Bye. Okay. Bye.
Bye, Dr. Harvey. Thank you.
Bye, Karen.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.
Hello, Anne Marie.
Well, hello, Marianne.
How are you?
I'm well. I thought today went very well.
It did go very well. We had wonderful presenters.
We did, and great technical behind the scenes staff.
Exactly.
I feel bad for Lisa, but we'll.
Yeah, you know, it's bigger than that because now that I think about it, I don't know that breakout sessions using just captioning would work for someone who needed how do they respond?
Right.
So we